The photos from our wedding looked effortless. Two people smiling into a future that seemed arranged and certain. I studied them once, on my phone while we were waiting to board. The flight for our honeymoon, wondering why I felt like I was observing someone else's life. She had been distant for weeks. Not hostile, just carefully polite. I told myself it was stress. Weddings turn people into performers. The hotel room overlooked a river cutting through the city. It was the kind of place couples save for. Soft lighting, one wide bed centered like a promise. She placed her suitcase near the window and stood still for a moment, as if measuring the space. "I'm not sharing a bed," she said. No anger, no explanation. Just a boundary delivered like a hotel policy. I waited for the rest of the sentence. There wasn't one. I thought she was joking at first. Or nervous. I tried to respond lightly. "It's our honeymoon." She folded her arms. "I need space." The air shifted. Not dramatically, just enough to make the room feel rented instead of ours. I asked if something was wrong. She said she just wasn't comfortable yet sounded indefinite. There are moments when your pride tries to speak before your clarity does. I swallowed it. I offered to take the couch for the first night. She agreed too quickly. That was the first signal. The couch was narrow and decorative. I lay there listening to the rhythm of her breathing from the bed. We had shared apartments before marriage, shared holidays, shared everything. But now there was this formal distance, like she had redrawn the map without telling me. Around 2 a.m., I stood up and walked to the window. The city lights flickered on the river's surface. I tried to ask myself the correct question. Was this fear? Was she overwhelmed? Or had I mistaken compliance for intimacy all along? The next morning, she behaved as if nothing unusual had happened. She suggested sightseeing, took photos near the river, laughed when strangers congratulated us. Back in the room that evening, she repeated it more directly. "I don't want to share a bed. I'm not ready." Ready for what? Marriage had already happened. Families had gathered. Vows had been said in front of witnesses and cameras. Readiness was supposed to precede all that. I felt something settle inside me then. Not rage, not humiliation. Just alignment. "Were you ready to get married?" I asked. She didn't answer immediately. "It's complicated." Complicated is a word people use when they want time without responsibility. That night I didn't argue. I didn't negotiate. I lay on the couch again and let the silence speak clearly. I realized that if I stayed, the negotiation would never end. Today it was the bed. Tomorrow it would be something else. Always me adjusting, proving, waiting. At dawn, before she woke up, I booked a flight home. I left a note on the desk. Not dramatic, just factual. I can't start a marriage this way. I won't compete. When she called 3 hours later, I was already at the airport. "You left me?" Her voice wasn't hurt. It was incredulous, as if I had violated a script. "I didn't leave you," I said evenly. "I left a situation that wasn't honest." "You're overreacting." Maybe. But clarity often looks extreme to someone comfortable with ambiguity. She told me I was embarrassing her, that people would ask questions, that I was making a temporary issue permanent. I thought about the couch, about the quiet confidence in her refusal, about how easily I had been reassigned. "If it's temporary," I said, "you can come home and we can talk. But I won't stay in a marriage that begins with rejection." There was a pause. Not emotional, strategic. "You're abandoning me," she said finally. That was when I understood something important. Her language relied on positioning me as the aggressor, so she wouldn't have to explain herself. When I landed, my phone was full of messages. Her sister, an aunt, A cousin asking what happened. I didn't defend myself loudly. I wrote one message and sent it to both families. We arrived at the hotel. She refused to share a bed without explanation. I chose to come home rather than pretend this was normal. I am willing to discuss our future honestly. I am not willing to perform a marriage. No accusations, no insults. Silence followed. By evening, her father called. His voice was controlled. He asked for details. I gave them without embellishment. When I finished, he sighed in a way that sounded less angry than disappointed. "I will speak to her," he said. That was the external shift. Not dramatic, not theatrical. Just an acknowledgement that the narrative wasn't as simple as abandonment. She didn't return that week, or the next. When we finally spoke in person, it wasn't explosive. She said she felt pressured into marriage by timing and expectation. She thought distance would help her adjust. "And if I had stayed?" I asked. She didn't answer. I realized then that leaving had been the only honest act in the entire sequence. Not because it punished her, but because it clarified the stakes. We separated quietly 2 months later. No public scandal. Just paperwork and careful conversations. People still ask what happened on the honeymoon. I tell them it wasn't about a bed. It was about alignment. About whether two people walk into a future willingly or by momentum. Sometimes choosing self-respect looks like departure. Not dramatic, not victorious, just firm. I don't hate her. I don't feel triumphant. But when I look back at those wedding photos now, I recognize the difference between performance and presence. And I know that if I had stayed on that couch, pretending patience was love, I would have disappeared in increments. Leaving didn't feel powerful. It felt necessary.